Imagine stepping into a grand cathedral, where the golden glow of saintly statues shimmers under the flickering candlelight, the rich scent of incense mingling with the resonant echoes of hymns, as if transporting you back to the earliest days of Christianity. You think you're in an Eastern Orthodox church, but suddenly an unexpected question startles you. Is this an Eastern Catholic church? At first glance, these two traditions appear as identical twins, with similar sacred rituals, equal devotion to Jesus Christ, and indistinguishable ancient customs. But what lies hidden deep within? As church, stirs an inevitable curiosity in people. Why did the two branches of Christianity split apart? What makes them, though both believe in Jesus, choose two completely different ways of life? And even more frightening, could this division be the start of an irreparable, permanent rift? May they be united as one, just as the Father is in the Son and the Son is in the Father. Let's embark on a journey to explore the 5 biggest differences between Eastern Orthodoxy and Eastern Catholicism. From forgotten mysteries buried deep to the chilling truths concealed within, I'll hold the key to the near-millennia gap between them. This truth may stir your heart with both awe for its sacredness and concern for the future of the Church. 5. Historical origins and the Great Schism. A shattered brotherhood. For centuries, Christianity was a unified faith, spreading throughout the mighty Roman Empire. But gradually, the cracks began to show. Cultural differences, theological debates, and the struggle for power gradually built the wall of division between the East and the West. The centuries-long tension simmered like a dormant storm, until it erupted in 1054 into what became known as the Great Schism. The moment Christianity split into two distinct branches, the Roman Catholic Church and the Eastern Orthodox Church. That moment was like a thunderclap in the heart of the cathedral, leaving today's Catholics unable to suppress a shudder. When thinking of the separation between brothers who share the same faith, the root of all conflict lies in the struggle for eternal power. The Pope in Rome declared himself the supreme leader of all Christian believers. The Eastern Patriarchs believe in collective leadership and oppose the notion that any single individual can hold absolute power. But this was only the beginning. Theological disagreements also played an equally crucial role, like a smoldering fire quietly fracturing unity. One of the most heated debates revolves around the newly added phrase in the Nicene Creed. The Western Church declares that the Holy Spirit proceeds from both the Father and the Son, a view known as filioque. The Eastern Church strongly opposes this, arguing that it would alter the fundamental foundation of Christian faith, as if offending the very teachings of Christ. The division lies not only in theological differences or power struggles, but also runs deep into cultural aspects. The Western Church uses Latin in its worship rituals following a strict, legalistic structure and regards the Pope as the supreme leader on earth. Conversely, the Eastern Church uses Greek with a mystical and philosophical approach to faith, while regarding the Patriarch of Constantinople as holding equal status with other patriarchs. The climax of the conflict occurred in 1054, when Pope Leo IX sent a delegation to Constantinople to resolve the dispute with the Patriarch. Instead of finding common ground, tensions escalated, and both sides severed all contact. That act was like a sharp blade slicing through the sacred thread connecting East and West. The Great Schism had ended, and Christianity was no longer whole as before. But what does this have to do with Eastern Catholicism? This is precisely when the story takes an unexpected turn, leaving you wondering. While the majority of Eastern Catholic faithful still belong to the Orthodox Church, some groups have chosen to re-establish communion with Rome over time while preserving their Eastern traditions. These communities developed into the Eastern Catholic churches. Their outward appearance and worship rituals resemble those of the Orthodox Church, yet they remain absolutely loyal to the Pope. So we have two groups nearly identical in faith, yet heading in completely opposite directions. One remains bound to Rome, the other chooses to stand independently. Though their histories are deeply intertwined, the differences between the two sides go far beyond whom they support, like a mystery yet to be unraveled. 4. The role of the Pope, supreme authority or equality. The focal point of the Vatican Council and one of the most fundamental differences between Roman Catholicism and Eastern Orthodoxy is the role of the Pope. This is not just a matter of tradition, but also involves power, authority, and the very structure of the Church. For Catholics, the Pope is a symbol of unity, but for the Orthodox, he is a cause of division. This inevitably raises the question: can one person truly be qualified to represent and make decisions on behalf of the entire Church of Christ? Let's talk about the Eastern Orthodox Church. From their perspective, no bishop, including the Patriarch of Constantinople, holds absolute authority over the entire Church. Instead, the Orthodox system operates on the principle of consensus, with the understanding that leadership is shared among the heads of different Orthodox churches. These leaders are called patriarchs, holding equal status with none above the other. This structure reflects a spirit of humility, where no individual is permitted to consider themselves the sole leader of the Church. On the contrary, the Eastern Catholic churches also recognize the Pope as the supreme leader of the Church, similar to Roman Catholic believers. But what's interesting and may surprise you is that Eastern Catholicism has retained autonomy in many areas. They elected their own patriarch, followed their distinct liturgical traditions, and established an independent leadership system. However, in the end, they still acknowledge the supreme decision-making authority of the Pope in Rome, especially in matters concerning doctrine and the unity of the Church. This is like a harmonious blend of Eastern tradition and loyalty to the heart of the faith in Rome. This difference is not purely theological but also deeply rooted in historical significance. Throughout the first millennium of Christianity, the Bishop of Rome, the Pope, was revered, but greater authority belonged to the Eastern Patriarchs. However, over time, the West gradually centralized power in the hands of the Pope, while the East maintained a decentralized model. To this day, this remains one of the biggest obstacles to the unification process. The Orthodox doctrine affirms that no single bishop has the authority to unilaterally determine the general direction of the entire Church. From the Catholic perspective, the Pope is the successor of Saint Peter, holding special authority granted by Jesus Christ himself. As the Lord said in the Gospel of Matthew, chapter 16, verse 18, "You are Peter," which means, rock. "On this rock, I will build my church, and the gates of Hades will not overcome it." This makes one wonder, why do some Eastern Catholic faithful recognize the authority of the Pope, while others do not accept it? The secret lies within the pages of history and the tides of political upheaval. Over the centuries, many Orthodox communities have reunited with Rome due to political pressures and theological consensus, or wish to connect with the broader global Catholic community. These groups have preserved their Eastern traditions while acknowledging the leadership of the Pope, thus becoming Eastern Catholic churches. So what does this actually mean? For the Eastern Catholic churches, the Pope is not merely a symbolic leader but also holds actual authority. Here are the natural English translations for the given Vietnamese text. On the other hand, for Orthodox followers, the concept of a supreme leader contradicts the belief in a church led by a council rather than by an individual. They regard the Pope as a respected bishop, but do not accept the view that could you explain the Church's teachings to all Christians? This difference holds immense significance, leaving Catholic devotees deeply unsettled. Can this rift be mended, or will it remain an unhealed wound in the body of Christ? Sabbath, liturgy, and sacred poetry. Are they enduring traditions or a faith that never ceases to evolve? When entering an Eastern Orthodox or Eastern Catholic church, at first glance, they appear almost identical, but you'll notice the stability in the symbol. The golden partition wall between the altar and the congregation shimmered with a radiant glow. The clear, melodious singing rose, interwoven with elaborate rituals performed amidst swirling clouds of incense. The priest's radiant vestments and the deeply meaningful rituals created an experience that transcended the bounds of time, as if you were stepping into a sacred realm beyond the mundane world. But it is here that the differences begin to stand out, leaving you startled and amazed. When reflecting on the upheavals that could shake long-standing traditional beliefs, both traditions share common worship rituals in the Eastern liturgical style, but the Eastern Catholic churches have been subtly influenced by the Roman Catholic Church. While the Orthodox East firmly defends its unchanging traditional values, for those who follow tradition, rituals are not something that can be arbitrarily changed. They believe their rituals have been preserved intact through the centuries, passed down since the time of the Holy Apostles. The ceremonial sword of the golden-mouthed delegation is used in most Orthodox rituals. Has existed for over 1,500 years with almost no change. Why is this important? Because for traditionalists, the liturgical rite is theology brought to life. Every hymn, every gesture, every prayer is imbued with profound theological truths. Even the slightest change can shake the pure faith they've cherished for so long. As a sacred treasure entrusted by Jesus. Moreover, the Orthodox Church does not accept its liturgy being altered by any external authority, not even the Pope. They believe that the liturgical rite must be preserved intact, and no one is permitted to alter it arbitrarily. Not even the Patriarch is exempt. On the other hand, Eastern Catholicism, whether following Byzantine liturgical traditions or other Eastern rites, has been influenced by Roman Catholicism for centuries. For example, some Eastern Catholic churches began using saint statues, a practice common in Western Catholicism, instead of just using the soundbar in a traditional way. In the past, some Eastern Catholic communities used the Latin rite in their religious practices. Phileo. Certain sacramental rites, including the manner of celebration, have been adjusted to better align with Western Catholic standards. Recently, a strong movement has emerged within the Eastern Catholic community, aiming to restore the original traditional values. It was the Vatican itself that encouraged the Eastern Catholic churches to preserve their own identities, not forced to Latinize their ways of operating. Today, many Eastern Catholic rites are reviving ancient traditions. Their liturgy increasingly embodies the distinctive Eastern character, but the fundamental difference still lies in power. For the Orthodox Church, the organization of liturgical rites is entirely at the Church's own discretion. Through enduring communities and time-honored traditions, no one, not even the Patriarch, has the authority to unilaterally alter the liturgical rites. Meanwhile, Eastern Catholicism has always remained faithful to tradition, still following the final directive from Rome. This difference leaves Catholics unable to help but wonder, does changing the liturgy diminish the sacredness of faith? Or is unity with Rome precisely what Jesus desires? As Jesus prayed in the Gospel of John, chapter 17, verse 21. May they be one, as you, Father, are in me and I am in you, so that they may also be with us. That question still echoes endlessly, and tradition in the Church of Christ. For those who follow the genuine Eastern tradition, liturgy is regarded as a sacred gift bestowed by the Lord. Humans cannot change that. Every prayer, every action in the Mass. Here are the translations, depending on the desired emphasis. Like an eternal treasure transcending time. But for the Eastern Catholics, though they were somewhat free in preserving their traditions, the Pope still holds supreme authority to monitor service activities as needed. Although the Vatican usually allows Eastern Catholic churches preserve your unique traditions, there's still a chance for change. What Orthodox theology cannot accept? This difference, Vietnamese Catholics cannot help but feel troubled and restless. Could changing the appendix, even just a minor detail, this could diminish the sacredness of faith that the saints have preserved? So what's the key point? Both traditions regard service as sacred and deeply imbued with historical significance. But from the Orthodox perspective, that is considered immutable, untouchable, as Jesus taught in the New Testament. Mateo 5, Cal 18. Before this heaven and earth vanish. Not a single dot or comma in the law can be overlooked until everything is done. Meanwhile, Eastern Catholicism has preserved its distinctive traditional features to exist within a system capable of flexible adaptation under the leadership of the Pope. This difference is not solely in the theological aspect. It impacts the entire journey of faith. For devout followers attending the Mass, as if stepping into a sacred world, still intact as before, the thread that connects to the past. For Eastern Catholic faithful, although the experience still carries a strong traditional touch, they are still part of the broader Catholic community, the place where the Vatican can influence how they practice. But the liturgy is only one part of the life of faith. What about theology? Let's explore a new field together, where these two traditions differ profoundly. Next life. 2. The afterlife. heaven, hell, and eternal separation. What happens after we die? This is one of the deepest questions humanity has ever asked, leaving Catholics uneasy and bewildered. Before the mystery of fate and soul, both Eastern Orthodoxy and Eastern Catholicism share the same belief in heaven, hell, and the Last Judgment. Here are the two translation options based on the context you provided. These differences are not merely trivial theological details. They help shape each culture's notion of justice, God's mercy, and the fate of the soul. The heart of this division revolves around a core issue. Purgatory is one of the most controversial issues in Christian history. For the Eastern Orthodox Church, heaven and hell are not specific places, but rather the spiritual state of a person when they accept or reject God's unconditional love. That is not a specific physical space, but a state of the soul. Before the love of God, they believe that when one dies, each person's soul must face judgment directly with the sacred love of God. But this experience will forever be an unending joy that belongs to that soul. The righteous are those who have lived a life of complete faith and purity. You will feel God's love as a sweet and blissful joy. Peace and fulfillment are heaven. On the contrary, those who deny God will also face that very love. Suffering, regret, and torment, that is hell. God does not send people to hell. Those who separate themselves from Him are the very ones who will feel His presence most keenly. Like a flame lacking firewood. This idea originates from the Church Fathers. Specifically, Inspector Isaac Tesserian stated that hell is not a punishment from God. It is the state of a soul imprisoning itself in suffering. I cannot accept such a sacred love. This perspective inevitably startles us with the realization that our eternal fate is determined by the punishments in this life. On the contrary, the Eastern Catholic Churches, which are in communion with the Roman Catholic Church. Here are the natural English translations based on the given options. A belief utterly denied by the establishment. According to Catholic doctrine, even those who have died in a state of God's grace, one may still need purification before entering heaven. Purgatory is not a second chance for humanity to attain salvation, nor is it a place for punishment. It is merely a temporary state where souls undergo purification to be in full communion with the Lord. This idea is often associated with St. Paul's first epistle to the Corinthians, chapter 3, verse 15. If someone's work is burned down, they will suffer the loss. That very person will be saved, yet as one escaping through the flames. Catholics interpret this passage as an allusion to the purifying fire of purgatory. This is the dividing line. The Orthodox Church completely rejects the doctrine of purgatory, as they believe the purification of the soul must occur within the present lifetime. For them, the intermediate state is where the soul is purified through sacred fire. This has no basis in the Bible and is also unnecessary. If hell is considered the experience of suffering in the face of God's presence, why is another purifying flame needed? Some Eastern Catholic faithful attempt to interpret the concept of purgatory through a theological framework more deeply rooted in Eastern thought. Describe it as a journey of recovery rather than suffering. But no matter how it's explained, the belief in purgatory remains a fundamental difference. This disagreement raises fundamental issues, leaving the Vietnamese Catholic community deeply troubled and concerned. Does God's mercy still exist after death, to purify souls in purgatory? Was our fate already sealed the moment we left this world? The Orthodox doctrine believes that the relationship between humans and God in this life determines everything. There is no purification after death, only the final judgment. Meanwhile, Eastern Catholic believers still maintain that even after death, God continually purifies the hearts of believers, preparing them to be fully united with Him. At its core, this is a debate about how to interpret God's justice and mercy. Does God purify imperfect souls after they die? Or hesitate to let them face eternity with the choices of their own lives? This question has sparked a debate between two schools of thought that have existed for centuries. But we have yet to address the greatest difference, the one that has kept these two traditions apart for nearly a millennium. 1. The Great Divide. Who holds the ultimate power? For nearly a millennium, an issue has been at the heart of the division between Eastern Orthodoxy and Eastern Catholicism. This is why these two traditions, despite sharing many theological, ritual, and historical commonalities, remain distinct. This issue transcends doctrinal differences, surpasses all disagreements about the afterlife, and outweighs every theological debate. This is the pivotal question that has shaped Christian history. Who holds supreme authority in the Church? This question startles Vietnamese Catholics, as it strikes at the very core of their faith. How can the Church of Jesus Christ be led correctly? For the Eastern Catholics, the clear answer is the Pope in Rome. As a branch of the Catholic Church, the Eastern Catholic Churches recognize the Pope as the supreme leader of all Catholic faithful. He is the concrete leadership center of the Church on earth and the supreme authority in matters of faith and doctrine. This belief stems from the Catholic perspective on the supreme authority of the Pope. The idea that the Bishop of Rome, as the successor of St. Peter, was granted special authority by Jesus Christ himself. This passage is taken from the Gospel of Matthew, chapter 16 verse 18, recording the words of Jesus to St. Peter. The rock, on this rock, I will build my church, and the power of death shall never overcome it. Therefore, Eastern Catholicism acknowledges the authority of the Pope not merely as a symbol of unity. Like an undeniable and absolute binding force, the Pope has the authority to decide on doctrine, resolve religious disputes, and in some cases, may also intervene in the affairs of local churches. Although Eastern Catholicism retains many liturgical and theological traditions deeply rooted in orthodoxy, acknowledging the supreme authority of the Pope is the core factor that defines a believer as Catholic. On the contrary, for the Eastern Orthodox Church, this view is completely unacceptable. The Orthodox Church rejects the view that any bishop, including the Bishop of Rome, has universal jurisdiction over the entire Church. Instead, they adopted a consensus model, where power is distributed among all the bishops, with no one holding absolute authority. In Orthodox Christianity, supreme authority does not belong to the Pope, but resides in the collective wisdom of the bishops. Especially when they gather together in the community to discuss and address matters related to faith. In the Orthodox tradition, the Pope of Rome was once revered as the first among equals among the patriarchs. This means a person who is respected and holds an honorable position but does not wield supreme authority. They believe that during the first millennium of Christianity, Rome served as the pivotal leadership center. But every decision is made collectively, not imposed by a single bishop. From the Orthodox perspective, the Catholic doctrine of papal supremacy is essentially a later development, inconsistent with the primitive teachings of the Church. Finally, the journey to understand the 5 major differences between Eastern Orthodoxy and Eastern Catholicism is a complex story, often misunderstood. Christianity has existed in various forms for nearly 1,000 years. From the ceremonial rites of purification, the concept of purgatory to the nature of ecclesiastical authority. At first glance, these two traditions may seem similar, but in reality, they are profoundly different. Despite centuries of relentless efforts to bridge the gap, that question still remains. Do they still have a chance to get back together? Some believe reconciliation is possible, while others think the divide has grown too wide. What do you think? Could the Eastern Orthodox Church and the Eastern Catholic Church be reunited someday? Or is this gap impossible to erase? Reflect and pray to find the answer? Because the journey of faith still continues, with reverence before the sacred and deep concern over the divisions within Christ's Church.